In the world of software development, sprint planning is more than just a meeting. It's the blueprint for success. But how do you ensure that each sprint isn't just a checkbox, but a leap towards your project's goals? Welcome to Frankly Developing. I'm your host Frank, and today we're diving deep into the art and science of sprint planning. We all seek to maximize our productivity and impact. Well, it's easier said than done, right? What if I told you that there are 5 key strategies that could transform your sprint planning from mundane to masterful? Strategies so effective that they address the core of common challenges we face. Let's take a look at those challenges most of us face. Challenge 1 is, how do we set our crystal clear goals so we know what to aim for? Next, we're always looking for this question that significantly alters our project's trajectory. The third challenge is, how do we ensure that our sprint is successful? And what strategy do we use to make sure our team's reputation is shining? And finally, we're all looking for a way to elevate our project's potential. Are these challenges you struggle with? If so, I give you one strategy for each of those questions to handle it. If you like this, on my channel there are many more things and many more tips like that, so subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed. Key strategy number 1 is to work on effective acceptance criteria. They give a story or feature a purpose, and you get transparency into what this is really about. It's also a very efficient way to streamline all the discussions and communication processes around this whole story. And you need it for quality control, like how do you tell in the end if this story is successfully completed, if it fulfills its purpose. And for that, with the acceptance criteria, you get a really great feedback loop. You can also use these acceptance criteria with your stakeholders to get feedback initially and ongoing throughout your sprint. So this is why it's really important to address your first challenge. So how do you make sure to set a crystal clear project goal? By defining crystal clear acceptance criteria for the work you're doing. Our second challenge was, is there something we can do to positively alter the trajectory of our entire project? And it turns out there's one very simple strategy. You just need to understand the why behind the feature or story. Why do users need that? Check for the alignment here with your stakeholders and users, and try to understand their actual problem. A lot of companies just give tasks or stories to the teams, to the developers, without explaining that, which is a big mistake. You need to understand what a user wants, what motivates them to bring up this user story. You can help them with prioritization because you know why it's so important. It's also a way to provide new innovations because as developers, if we understand the core problem that they're trying to solve and we know all the technological side, then maybe we can come up with new innovative ideas instead of just a plain simple story, do something crazy but actually really innovative that solves the problem in a new and amazing way. And that gives you the way to adapt all of your changes throughout the sprint as well, because you understand what you're really aiming for, why you need this story. You can make a lot of decisions and streamline the results to get a really great project going. So that's strategy number 2. Understand the why behind a story or feature. Continuing on, we have challenge number 3. How do we ensure the success of our sprint? And again, there's one simple key strategy. All the work you plan for your sprint needs to be tackled in a certain order. Take the most risky work that you're most worried about first. Don't delay. First of all, this is a risk mitigation strategy. You don't want to run into risky problematic things at the end of the sprint when everything is on a very short time window. have those problems appear early and use the entire sprint length to address them. You can allocate resources appropriately. Like in the beginning, when this is the really risky thing, bring in all the power of the team, work together, solve it. And then what you're doing is confidence building. You've done the hardest thing already, and the rest should be smooth sailing. And finally, also, there's the learning opportunities that are hiding in these kits. So in the hardest task is where you learn the most. And should all things fail, I mean, what is a success? If you grow stronger, that is like long-term success for all the sprints. And finally, again, there's stakeholder trust, because this is the riskiest thing, the hardest thing to do, and you did it. Well, the chances, if you address it first in your sprint, are way higher. So that builds up trust with your stakeholders, which is crucial to generate success on the long term. Now, the fourth challenge was, how do we keep the reputation of our team shining? And this is harder as it sounds, but it can also be quite easy. The strategy I recommend for this is to commit very little in your sprint planning. Totally undercommit, but overdeliver. Because if you undercommit, it's not that you're not doing a lot of work anymore. It's that you become reliable. The expectations you set, they are realistic. These things you undercommitted, you do commit for real. Like these things you will do, these stories, these features will be done. Unless hell freezes over, this is a success. And then on top, you can do a lot of other stuff still, but make sure that the expectations are met. That makes it very reliable. It also gives you a really hard focus on quality of your work. You want these few committed things to be perfect. And this is actually crucial, because you learn from Accelerate that this is the basis for actually going really fast, which again will raise your reputation. And there's like this surprise factor, of course. People like getting surprises in the positive sense of your over delivery, delivering some new things because you had enough time left in your sprint. The stuff you promised is done, and then you can optimize and deliver what the stakeholders desire most on top of that. And also for yourself and your team, it helps a lot in reducing stress. Because if your sprint goal is undercommitted, you should be able to achieve it a lot earlier than very close to the sprint end. So it's a very smooth progress. You have at the beginning of the sprint, you really work on this, but it's not stressy because you have all of the sprint left. And by the time you're done, there's still a lot left. So there's never a point where you have this high pressure stress of having to meet some expectation that you overcommitted initially. So finally, if you do this, you build a track record. The change might be hard in some organizations because you used to deliver a lot maybe and promise a lot. But now if you look at what you actually delivered, it usually doesn't match up. If you turn that around and you undercommit, but you do everything you can to really deliver these things, then you will build a reputation of being reliable, of actually delivering what you promise. And that is a game changer. Now we get to the last challenge. How do we elevate our project's potential? And again, one strategy will help you massively. Involve everyone in the sprint planning. Don't just have like a team lead or senior do that work. Get all these diverse perspectives into play. You can get a lot more innovative solutions in that way. You get a boost of engagement if everyone is included. Everyone wants to satisfy these goals and fulfill them. And you have a decision ownership. It's not that you have to decide on your own. The whole team together has decided to commit these things, to do it this way or that way. You can also utilize all the skills that your team brings along. What's the point in leaving out half of the skills in the planning? And finally, you learn about conflict resolution, because there will be conflict initially. Open dialogue is something you need to learn in the team, but eventually you will be able to address this and preemptively get rid of all of these conflicts. And that brings us to the summary of our challenges, and stay tuned for one final extra tip. How do you get crystal clear goals? You define proper acceptance criteria. Don't forget to ask that one super important question. Why? And to ensure success, work on the most risky task first. Keep your reputation up by undercommitting and over-delivering. And finally, don't be a lone wolf. Bring in the entire team to get the most out of it. As promised, I have one final tip for you. When you do your planning, plan for the worst. Assume an utter failure. Do a pre-mortem of your sprint. Check out this video on how to do a pre-mortem.